Lily, a 16-year-old girl with long brown hair and pale skin, stood at the edge of her bedroom, staring at the picture on her phone. It was a photo of her, but not the way she remembered herself. It was blurry, taken without her knowing, and it made her skin crawl. She could hear her heart racing as the phone slipped from her hands and clattered to the floor. The dark room felt like it was closing in on her, like the walls were watching her too. Her fingers trembled as she bent down to pick it up. The picture was still there, like a dark secret. How did this happen? She thought. No one was supposed to know about this. The secret that she kept hidden for so long was suddenly out in the world. She could almost hear the whispers. What are they saying about me? Lily's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't just one message, it was dozens. Her stomach twisted. Why me? She whispered to the empty room. Before we dive into this story, comment below where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to subscribe. The next day, everything felt different. Lily tried to go about her usual routine, brushing her hair, getting dressed for school, but nothing felt normal. Her shoes felt too tight, and even the air seemed thicker, like it was pressing down on her. Every time someone walked by, she could feel their eyes on her, even though they weren't looking. The photo was out, and no one was pretending it wasn't there. At school, it was worse. The hallways buzzed with whispers, and Lily could feel every set of eyes on her back. The laughter, the hushed conversations, all seemed to fade into one endless hum. But it wasn't just at school. When she got home, her mom was staring at her phone, her face pale, her lips pressed tightly together. Lily felt a pang in her chest. She knew her mom had seen the photo too. You need to tell me what happened, her mom said, her voice quiet but full of worry. Lily swallowed. She wanted to scream, to explain everything. But the words stuck in her throat. There was too much to explain, too much she couldn't say. Lily was sitting in the living room when her phone rang again. The ringtone was like a loud crash in the silence of the house. Her heart skipped as she saw the name on the screen, Tessa. She answered quickly, hoping to hear her best friend's voice, the one person who understood her. Lily, Tessa's voice was shaky. You saw it, didn't you? Lily nodded even though Tessa couldn't see her. She could feel the tension between them like a rope pulling tighter with each passing second. They're calling you out, Tessa whispered, her voice lower now, and you're not the only one. There are others. More pictures. Lily's breath caught in her throat. More pictures. What did Tessa mean? And who else was involved? Lily spent the whole night lying awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The sound of rain tapping against the window was the only thing that kept her company. Her thoughts swirled like storm clouds in her head. The photos weren't just of her. There were others, too, people she knew, people she didn't expect. Each of them had their own secret, their own story waiting to be uncovered. At school the next day, things were different. The whispers had turned into stares. Lily felt like she was walking through a fog, every step slower than the last. She could feel the weight of the looks, the questions hanging in the air. What would they say about her? Would they believe her if she told them the truth? Or would she become just another story for them to spread? Lily walked through the hallways, her head down, the buzzing of the school around her like a swarm of bees. But then she saw him, Eli. He was standing by the lockers, his eyes locked on hers. It wasn't a look of sympathy or judgment, but something else. Curiosity. Maybe even understanding. That evening, Lily sat in her room, staring at the screen of her phone once again. The photo was still there, still spreading like wildfire. Her mind raced. The secret was out, but the question lingered. What now? Her hands trembled as she typed a message to Eli. She didn't know why, but there was something about him that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone in this as she thought. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before she hit send. Do you know anything about the pictures? She asked. The response was almost immediate. Meet me at the park after school tomorrow. I'll explain. The next day, Lily stood nervously at the edge of the park, the cold wind nipping at her skin. She could feel the tension in her chest, the anticipation building up. She wasn't sure what she expected Eli to say, but she knew it had to be important. When Eli arrived, he didn't say anything at first. He just handed her his phone. Lily took it hesitantly, looking down at the screen. There, on his phone, was a collection of photos. Some were of her, others were of people she barely recognized. Each photo was just like the one of her, the blurry, stolen moments that no one should have seen. I didn't take them, Eli said quietly. But I know who did. The world around Lily seemed to fade as Eli spoke, his words sinking in slowly. You know who took the pictures? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eli nodded, his expression serious. But they're not going to stop here. There's more, Lily. And the person who's behind this? They won't rest until they've exposed every secret. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. The rain started to fall, cold and steady, as if the world itself was warning her. The game was on, and there was no going back, with each passing day. The storm of whispers and judgment grew louder. More pictures surfaced. More secrets spilled. And the truth seemed to slip further away, like sand through her fingers. But Lily was done hiding. Lily couldn't shake the weight of Eli's words. That night, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked pale, her eyes tired. The storm outside matched the turmoil in her chest. Who would do this? And why? Eli had promised to help, but trust wasn't easy. What if he was part of it? What if he was just another player in this cruel game? Her phone buzzed again, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Tessa. Tessa, meet me after school. I know something. Lily's heart skipped. What could Tessa know? Suddenly, the pieces seemed to be falling into place, but the picture they formed wasn't clear yet. After school, Lily found herself at the corner of the library, where Tessa waited nervously. The air was thick with tension. I didn't want to tell you before, Tessa began, her voice shaking. But I saw someone, at the party last month. They were taking pictures, but not the normal kind. It was weird, like they were sneaking around. Lily's stomach churned. Who was it? She asked, her voice firmer than she expected. Tessa hesitated, her eyes darting to the side. It was Mason. I think he's the one behind all this. Mason? Lily's mind reeled. He was the last person she would have suspected, a quiet guy who kept to himself. But that didn't mean he was innocent. The next day, Lily found Mason near the art room, headphones in, sketching in his notebook. Her heart pounded as she approached him. Mason, she said, her voice cutting through the quiet. He looked up, startled. Hey, Lily. What's up? What's up? She repeated, her voice rising. You tell me. Why were you taking pictures of people at the party? Mason blinked, clearly caught off guard. Pictures? What are you talking about? Lily's hands trembled, but she held her ground. Don't play dumb. Tessa saw you. Why are you doing this? Mason's face darkened. I think you've got the wrong idea, he said quietly, but there was something in his tone, something that made Lily's skin crawl. Later that evening, as Lily replayed the conversation in her head, her phone buzzed again. She hesitated before picking it up. The message wasn't from Tessa or Eli this time. Unknown number. Stop digging. You don't know what you're getting into. Her blood ran cold. Whoever was behind this knew she was getting closer. Lily didn't sleep that night. Every noise outside her window sounded like footsteps, every shadow like someone lurking. She kept the message open on her phone, staring at it until her eyes burned. By morning, she had made up her mind. She wouldn't back down. If Mason was part of this, she needed proof. And if there was someone else pulling the strings, she'd find them too. Eli was waiting for her by the lockers, his face pale. I heard about Mason, he said as she approached. You need to be careful, Lily. This isn't just about the pictures anymore. What do you mean? She asked, her voice sharp. Eli handed her a small notebook. I found this in the art room. It has names in it, yours, Tessa's, and others. I think Mason was keeping track of people. Lily flipped through the pages, her heart sinking with every name she read. The list was longer than she expected. That evening, Lily decided to confront Tessa again. But when she arrived at her house, something felt off. Tessa wasn't herself, she was quiet, avoiding Lily's eyes. "Why didn't you tell me about Mason sooner?" Lily asked. Tessa fidgeted with her bracelet. I didn't think it mattered." "You didn't think it mattered?" Lily's voice cracked. "Tessa, you knew someone was spying on us, and you said nothing." Tessa looked up, tears in her eyes. "I didn't want to get involved. I didn't think it would go this far." But something about her tone didn't sit right. Was Tessa hiding more? The next few days passed in a blur. Eli helped Lily dig deeper into the names in the notebook, but the more they uncovered, the more confusing it became. Some of the names were people Lily barely knew, while others were close friends. And then there was the symbol. Drawn in the corner of every page was a small, strange symbol, a circle with a line cutting through it. What does it mean? Lily asked Eli as they sat in the library, surrounded by books and papers. Eli shook his head. "I don't know, but it's important. Whoever's behind this wants us to find it." One evening, as Lily was walking home, she felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Someone was following her. She quickened her pace, her heart pounding. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind her. She turned a corner, then another, trying to lose them. But the footsteps stayed close. Finally, she spun around. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice echoing in the empty street. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Mason. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. Lily's fists clenched as she stood her ground. "Why are you following me, Mason?" she demanded, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound strong. Mason tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "You're asking questions you shouldn't, Lily. People notice when you dig too deep." "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice rising. He took a step closer, his figure looming in the dim light. "It means you should stop. Whatever you think you're going to find, it's not worth it." Before she could respond, Mason turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving Lily more determined, and more frightened, than ever. That night, Lily sat with the notebook spread open on her desk. The strange symbol, the circle with the line through it, seemed to pulse with meaning she couldn't grasp. She searched online for hours, trying different combinations of words: circle symbol secret, line through circle meaning, hidden symbols. Nothing seemed to match. Frustrated, she leaned back in her chair. Her gaze fell on a stack of old photos from the party. She hadn't thought much of them before, but now she picked them up, her fingers trembling. In one of the photos, taken in the background, she saw something she hadn't noticed before: Mason talking to Tessa. Both of them looking nervous. The next morning, Lily couldn't wait any longer. She confronted Eli in the school courtyard. "Tessa's involved," she said, handing him the photo. Eli studied it, his brow furrowing. "She's been lying to us," Lily continued. She knew Mason was up to something, and she didn't say anything. Eli looked up, his expression serious. "If Tessa is involved, then we need to find out how deep it goes. But we can't let her know we're onto her." Lily nodded, a new determination taking root. "Then we follow her. We find out what she's hiding." After school, Lily and Eli trailed Tessa as she walked home. They kept their distance, hiding behind trees and parked cars whenever she glanced over her shoulder. Tessa stopped at a small coffee shop, looking around nervously before stepping inside. Through the window, they saw her sit down across from Mason. "I knew it," Lily whispered, her heart racing. Eli pulled out his phone and began recording. "Whatever they're planning, we need proof," he said quietly. Inside, Tessa and Mason were deep in conversation, their voices muffled by the glass. But one word carried through clearly: exposure. Later that night, Lily replayed the video Eli had recorded. Tessa and Mason's conversation was still hard to make out, but the word exposure echoed in her mind. What did it mean? She opened the notebook again, staring at the symbol. Suddenly, something clicked. The word exposure was written faintly in the corner of one page, almost like a watermark, exposure. She muttered. It's not just a word. It's a code. Lily spent the next few days deciphering the notes in the notebook. Eli helped, though his skepticism grew with every dead end. What if it's just random scribbles? He asked one evening. It's not, Lily insisted. Look at the pattern. She pointed to a series of numbers written alongside the names, 3-15-18-14, Eli frowned. It could be a code for letters. Like in those spy movies. Lily's eyes lit up. Soren, she said, her fingers tracing the letters. Corn. What does that mean? It's a place, Eli said, his voice dropping. Corn Avenue. It's on the other side of town. Corn Avenue was a quiet, deserted street lined with old warehouses. Lily and Eli arrived just as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. This is it, Eli said, checking the address they'd found scribbled in the notebook. Lily's stomach churned as they approached the largest warehouse. The symbol from the notebook was painted on the door in faded white. We shouldn't go in, Eli warned, his voice shaky, but Lily's hand was already on the handle. We have to, she said, pushing the door open. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of damp wood. Dust swirled in the faint light streaming through broken windows. At the center of the room stood a table covered in papers and photographs. Lily stepped closer, her breath catching as she recognized the faces in the photos. They were her classmates, her friends. Eli picked up one of the papers, his face pale. These are plans. For everyone. Like someone's keeping tabs on them. Lily's heart raced as she found a photo of herself. Written across it in bold red letters was a single word, Target. Lily froze as the word Target burned into her mind. Her photo was surrounded by arrows and notes she couldn't quite understand. Why me? She whispered, her voice trembling. Eli paced behind her, the paper in his hands shaking. This isn't just about you. He said, pointing to the other photos. This is everyone we know. Why are they watching us? Lily's eyes locked onto a corner of the table, where a recorder sat blinking with a red light. Someone's been recording everything, she said. Eli hesitated but hit the playback button. The room filled with distorted voices. Keep an eye on her. Exposure is imminent. The sound cut off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence. We need to leave. Now, Eli whispered, fear thick in his voice. As they turned to leave, a loud creak echoed through the warehouse. Lily and Eli froze. Footsteps approached from the shadows. Who's there? Lily called, her voice trembling. A tall figure emerged. Backlit by the dim light from the doorway. It was Mason. I warned you to stop, he said, his voice calm but menacing. Lily stepped in front of Eli, her fists clenched. What is this? Why are you targeting us? Mason's lips curled into a smirk. It's bigger than you, Lily. Bigger than all of us. Before she could respond, Mason stepped forward and snatched the notebook from her hands. You've seen too much, he said, his tone cold. Lily's heart pounded as Mason's grip tightened on the notebook. Give it back. She shouted, lunging for it. Mason shoved her aside, but Eli jumped in, grabbing Mason's arm. The struggle sent papers flying everywhere. Run, Lily! Eli yelled. She hesitated for a split second. Then grabbed as many scattered pages as she could and bolted for the door. She heard Mason shout behind her, followed by the sound of a scuffle. Outside, Lily looked back to see Eli racing toward her. Go! He yelled, his face pale. Together, they sprinted into the night, the cold air biting at their faces. Back at Lily's house, they locked the door and dumped the papers onto her bed. Both of them were out of breath, their hands shaking. Lily spread the pages out, her eyes scanning for anything that made sense. One caught her attention, a list of names, including hers and Eli's. Next to her name, the word exposure appeared again, but this time it was underlined. Why does this keep coming up? She muttered. Eli pointed to another name on the list, Tessa. She's involved, he said. We need answers from her. Lily nodded, determination hardening her features. We'll confront her tomorrow. This ends now. The next morning, Lily and Eli found Tessa in the library. She looked startled when they approached her, clutching her books tightly. Tessa, we need to talk, Lily said firmly. I don't know what you're talking about, Tessa replied, her voice trembling. Eli held up one of the papers they'd recovered. Your name is on this. Along with ours. You've been lying to us. Tessa's face turned pale. She glanced around nervously before whispering, not here. Meet me after school, behind the old gym. As she walked away, Lily felt a mix of fear and determination. Whatever Tessa knew, it could change everything. After school, Lily and Eli waited behind the gym. The air was tense, every sound making them jump. Tessa appeared, her eyes darting around as if someone was watching. I shouldn't be talking to you, she said quickly. Then why are you? Lily demanded. Tell us what's going on. Tessa hesitated before finally whispering, it's not safe. Mason and the others. They're watching everything. The exposure project is real, and it's dangerous. What is it? Eli asked, his voice urgent. Tessa shook her head. If I tell you, they'll come for me too. Just, stay away. Tessa. We can't stay away. Lily said, stepping closer. They've already marked us. We need to know what we're up against. Tessa's lips trembled as she looked at Lily, then Eli. You don't understand, she whispered. Exposure isn't just about secrets. It's about control. Control of what? Eli pressed. Everything, Tessa said, her voice barely audible. They're building a network. Watching people, manipulating them. If you're on that list, it means they think you're a threat. Lily's chest tightened. A threat to what? To their plan, Tessa replied, her voice breaking. If you keep digging, they won't just watch you. They'll make sure you disappear. That night, Lily lay awake in her bed, Tessa's words looping in her mind. Disappear. The word felt heavier than it should, carrying a weight that threatened to crush her. She stared at the papers spread across her desk, the fragments of a puzzle that refused to come together. The word exposure glared at her from one corner. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Stop now, or you'll regret it. Lily's blood ran cold. She sat up, gripping her phone tightly. Someone was watching her. The next morning, Lily showed Eli the message. His jaw tightened as he read it. This means we're getting close, he said. Close to what? Lily asked, her voice shaking. Eli glanced around, lowering his voice. To whatever they don't want us to find. We need to push harder. But how? They're already on to us, Lily said, her stomach twisting. Eli thought for a moment, then nodded. We need to be smarter. We'll let them think we're backing off, but behind the scenes, we'll dig deeper. And we start with Tessa. When they found Tessa at lunch, she looked more nervous than ever. Why are you still asking questions? She hissed. I told you to stop. Lily leaned in, her voice firm. We can't stop, Tessa. You're in this too. Help us, or we're all going down together. Tessa's eyes darted between them. Finally, she sighed. Fine. There's one place where they keep everything. Proof, files. Everything about exposure. Where? Eli asked, his tone sharp. Tessa hesitated before whispering, the warehouse on Eastbrook. But it's heavily guarded. If you go, you'll need a plan. That evening, Lily and Eli sat in her room, planning their next move. We can't just walk into the warehouse, Eli said. We need a distraction. Lily nodded, tapping her pen against the notebook. What about the security cameras? If we can disable them, we might have a chance. Eli grinned. Leave that to me. I know a guy who owes me a favor. As they finalized their plan, Lily felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. This was their chance to uncover the truth, but it might also be their most dangerous move yet. The next day, Eli's friend, a tech-savvy classmate named Ryan, met them at the school library. "You're lucky I'm bored," he said, smirking as he pulled out his laptop. Ryan's fingers flew across the keyboard. "The cameras are linked to an old system. Easy to crack," he said. "But you'll only have a 10-minute window before the backup kicks in." "10 minutes is enough," Lily said, her voice steady. Ryan looked at her, raising an eyebrow. "You sure about this? You're poking a bear." Lily glanced at Eli, then back at Ryan. "We don't have a choice." That night, Lily and Eli stood outside the warehouse on Eastbrook, their hearts pounding in unison. Ryan's voice crackled through their earbuds. "You're live. Cameras are down in 3, 2, 1. The red light on the nearest camera blinked off. "Go." Ryan whispered. Lily and Eli slipped inside, moving quickly but carefully. The warehouse was eerily quiet, the faint hum of machinery the only sound. "Split up," Eli said. "We'll cover more ground." Lily hesitated but nodded. Clutching her flashlight tightly as she ventured deeper into the shadows, Lily's flashlight beam landed on a metal filing cabinet in the corner of the warehouse. She tugged it open, her breath catching as she saw the files inside. Each one had a name, a photo, and detailed notes. She flipped through them until she found her own. Her hands shook as she read the words written under her name: "Potential disruptor. High risk." Footsteps echoed behind her, and she spun around, her heart racing. It was Eli, holding a thick folder. "I found this," he said, his voice low. "It's about the plan. They're targeting more than just us." Lily and Eli huddled together in the dim corner, flipping through the thick folder Eli had found. Each page revealed chilling details about exposure. "It's a surveillance system," Lily whispered, her voice shaky. "But it's more than that. It's manipulation. Control over people's lives." Eli pointed to a diagram of a sprawling web connecting various names and locations. "They're monitoring everyone tied to these disruptors," he said grimly. "If someone steps out of line, they remove them." Lily clenched her fists. "This isn't just about us. We have to stop them." Suddenly, the hum of machinery grew louder. Lights flickered on, illuminating the warehouse. "They know we're here." Lily hissed. Eli grabbed her arm. "We need to go. Now." They sprinted toward the exit, their footsteps echoing loudly. Behind them, voices shouted, and heavy boots pounded the floor. Lily clutched the folder tightly as they burst through the door into the cold night air. They didn't stop running until they were several blocks away, gasping for breath in an alley. "Did you get it?" Eli asked, his eyes wide. Lily nodded, holding up the folder. "We have proof now." Back at Lily's house, they locked the door and spread the contents of the folder on the table. Names, dates, and detailed reports stared back at them. Eli tapped one name repeatedly: Dr. Monroe. "This person is at the center of it all," he said. "We need to find them." Lily bit her lip. "If we reach out, we'll be exposing ourselves even more." "What if it's a trap?" Eli's expression hardened. "We don't have a choice. If we don't act, they'll come for us anyway." Reluctantly, Lily nodded. "Let's do it." Eli managed to find Dr. Monroe's email through a deep web search. He crafted a message, careful to leave no traceable details. The reply came faster than they expected: "Meet me. Midnight. Westfield Bridge. Come alone." Lily read the message twice, her stomach twisting. It could be a setup. "Or it could be our only chance," Eli said firmly. As the clock approached midnight, they prepared to meet this mysterious figure, unsure if they were walking into an ambush, or uncovering the truth. The bridge loomed ahead, its metal frame casting eerie shadows under the pale moonlight. Lily and Eli hid in the bushes, watching for any sign of Dr. Monroe. A lone figure emerged, their coat billowing in the wind. "That must be them," Eli whispered, clutching the folder. Lily stepped out cautiously. Dr. Monroe. The figure turned, revealing a woman with piercing eyes and a weathered face. You're braver than I expected, she said. Lily held up the folder. We need answers. What is exposure? Dr. Monroe's expression darkened. You've stumbled into something far bigger than you realize. Dr. Monroe led them to a small cafe nearby, its windows darkened. This place is safe, for now, she said. As they sat, Monroe opened the folder, scanning the documents. This is worse than I thought. She muttered. What do you mean? Lily asked. Monroe sighed. Exposure started as a way to predict threats. But it evolved. They don't just observe anymore, they eliminate. People disappear when they don't comply. Eli leaned forward. Why are you helping us? Monroe hesitated, then said, because I designed it. And I've been trying to destroy it ever since. Dr. Monroe slid a piece of paper across the table. This is where you need to go. It's the main hub of the system. Lily stared at the address. If we destroy the hub, will it stop everything? Monroe shook her head. It'll cripple them, but not completely. This is just the start. Eli clenched his fists. Then we'll start with this. Whatever it takes. Monroe looked at them, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. You'll need allies. This fight isn't one you can win alone. Over the next few days, Lily and Eli worked tirelessly, reaching out to people they trusted. Ryan joined them without hesitation, his technical skills invaluable. Tessa was more reluctant but eventually agreed. If we're doing this, we need to be smart, she said. Lily looked at her growing team. They were young, inexperienced, and terrified, but they were determined. This is it, Lily said, her voice steady. We're going to bring them down. The team gathered in Ryan's cramped basement, which was now their makeshift headquarters. The air buzzed with a mix of fear and determination. Ryan unfurled a map of the city, marking a red X over the address Dr. Monroe had given them. This is their main hub. The server farm is here, underground, heavily guarded. Tessa frowned. How do we even get close? They'll spot us a mile away. Eli leaned forward. We create a distraction. Something that forces them to focus elsewhere while we sneak in. And what about once we're inside? Lily asked. Ryan's face was grim. We'll need someone to hack their system and plant a virus to shut it down. I'll do it, Lily said firmly. Eli grabbed her hand. No. You're not going in alone. The plan came together in bits and pieces. Ryan and Tessa would create chaos on the far side of the hub, a staged fire alarm to lure the guards away. Meanwhile, Lily and Eli would infiltrate the underground server room, using Dr. Monroe's access codes to get past security. It's risky, Tessa admitted, tightening the straps on her backpack. If anything goes wrong. It won't, Lily said, her voice steady. But deep down, her heart raced with doubt. As they finalized the plan, Monroe handed Lily a small USB drive. This has the virus. Once it's uploaded, the system will start collapsing from within. You'll have 5 minutes to get out before they realize what's happening. Lily nodded, slipping the drive into her pocket. We won't let you down. The night was eerily quiet as they approached the hub. The towering building loomed over them. Its stark exterior hiding the secrets within. Ryan and Tessa split off, heading toward the service entrance. See you on the other side, Ryan whispered before disappearing into the shadows. Lily and Eli crept around the back, finding the hidden access hatch Monroe had described. Eli pried it open with a crowbar, the metal screeching softly. Let's go, Lily whispered, lowering herself into the dark tunnel below. Inside, the air was damp and cold. The faint hum of machinery grew louder as they moved deeper into the labyrinth. Eli checked the map on his phone. We're close, he said, his voice barely audible. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them. They froze. Lily held her breath as the footsteps drew closer. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure it would give them away. Eli motioned for her to hide. They ducked behind a stack of crates, pressing themselves against the cold metal. A guard walked past, his flashlight slicing through the darkness. He paused, scanning the area. Lily clutched Eli's arm, her nails digging into his skin. The guard hesitated for a moment longer, then moved on. As the footsteps faded, Lily exhaled shakily. That was too close. We can't stop now, Eli whispered, pulling her to her feet. At last, they reached the server room. The door was massive, reinforced with steel. Lily typed in a code Monroe had provided, her fingers trembling, with a soft beep. The door slid open. Inside, rows of blinking servers stretched endlessly, their lights casting an eerie glow. Let's find the main terminal, Eli said, scanning the room. Lily spotted it, a large console in the center, surrounded by wires. She hurried over, plugging in the USB drive. The screen lit up, displaying a loading bar. It's working, she whispered, but then, alarms blared. Red lights flashed, and a voice crackled over the intercom. Intrusion detected. Lockdown initiated. The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside the server room. No, no, no. Eli shouted, pounding on the door. Lily focused on the screen, watching the loading bar inch forward. We just need a few more minutes. Outside, the sound of boots echoed as guards rushed toward their location. Eli grabbed a metal rod, positioning himself near the door. I'll hold them off as long as I can. Eli, don't. Lily pleaded. He turned to her, his expression fierce. If I don't, neither of us gets out of here. The guards began banging on the door, their muffled voices shouting commands. Lily's hands shook as she monitored the virus's progress. 80%. 85%. Come on, she muttered under her breath. The door started to give way, the metal bending under the pressure. Eli stood his ground, gripping the rod tightly. Whatever happens, finish this, he said. At 100%, the screen flashed. Virus uploaded successfully. The servers began to shut down, one by one, their hums fading into silence. We did it. Lily cried, but the door burst open, and the guards stormed in. The guards swarmed in, their flashlights blinding. Freeze. One of them barked, aiming his weapon at Eli. Eli raised the rod, stepping in front of Lily. Run, he whispered, but Lily wasn't leaving without him. She grabbed a smoke grenade from her bag, a last-minute addition from Tessa, and hurled it toward the guards. The room filled with thick, choking smoke, obscuring everything. Eli, this way. Lily shouted, grabbing his arm. Coughing, they stumbled toward the emergency vent Monroe had mentioned. Eli kicked it open. And they crawled through, the sound of guards shouting behind them. The tunnel seemed endless, but finally, they emerged into the night air, gasping for breath. Lily and Eli ran until their legs gave out, collapsing in an alley far from the hub. Eli wiped sweat from his brow. Did it work? Did the virus do what it was supposed to? Lily pulled out her phone, accessing the secure connection Monroe had set up. The servers were offline, their system dismantled. It worked, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. We shut them down. Eli pulled her into a hug. We did it. But their relief was short-lived. A car screeched to a halt nearby, headlights cutting through the darkness. They found us, Eli muttered. Before they could react, men in black suits stepped out of the car, weapons drawn. Don't move, one of them ordered. Lily and Eli raised their hands, their hearts pounding. They were forced into the car, blindfolded, and driven away. What do you want from us? Eli demanded, struggling against his restraints. A cold voice responded, you've caused a lot of trouble. Now it's time to face the consequences. Lily's mind raced. Who were these people? Were they connected to the organization, or someone worse? When the blindfolds were removed, they were in a dimly lit room. A single figure sat across from them, their face obscured by shadows. You're brave. I'll give you that, the figure said, their voice calm but menacing. But bravery doesn't mean you'll win. Lily squared her shoulders. We already did. Your system is gone. The figure laughed. Do you think it's that simple? Destroy one hub, and you've won the war. Eli leaned forward. What are you talking about? The organization doesn't rely on one system. We adapt, evolve. You've only delayed the inevitable. As the interrogation continued, the door burst open, and Tessa stormed in, disguised as one of the guards. "Hands off them," she barked, shoving a forged ID into the face of the interrogator. The room fell silent. The interrogator hesitated, clearly unsure, in the confusion. Ryan slipped in from behind, disabling the guards with a stun gun. "Time to go," he whispered. Lily and Eli stared in shock as Tessa tossed them a set of keys. "Move it, before they realize what's happening." The group fled into the night, leaving chaos behind them. In the safety of a hideout, Ryan explained, "We have to finish what we started. The organization is bigger than we thought, but they're vulnerable now. We hit them where it hurts." Lily looked around at her friends, their faces determined despite the danger. "We'll fight," she said, her voice steady. "Until they're gone for good." The group huddled in the dimly lit hideout, tension thick in the air. Ryan spread a map on the table. "Marking locations with red ink, these are their other hubs," he said. "If we can take out 2 more, their communication grid collapses entirely." Eli frowned. "And then what? We're just 4 people against a global network." Lily shook her head. "We're not alone. Dr. Monroe has contacts. There are others who've been hurt by them. If we rally them, we'll have an army." Tessa leaned back, arms crossed. "An army's great, but we're running out of time. They'll come for us first." The group fell silent, the weight of their mission sinking in. Lily's voice broke through the tension. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." As the team prepared for their next move, Lily's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an encrypted message, bearing a symbol she recognized from her mother's old notes, a black rose. "It's from my mom's contact," Lily said, her voice trembling. "They're offering to help." The message gave coordinates to a meeting spot in a remote forest. "But it could be a trap," Eli warned. Lily looked at him, determination burning in her eyes. "It's a risk we have to take. If this person knew my mom, they might have the answers we've been looking for." The forest was dense and silent, the kind of silence that made every rustling leaf sound like a threat. Lily clutched her backpack tightly as they approached the clearing marked on the map. A figure stood waiting, cloaked in shadow. "Lily Carter," the figure said, their voice low and gravelly. "You're braver than your mother ever was." Lily stiffened. "You knew her?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a weathered face marked by scars. "I was her ally once. And now, I'll be yours, if you're ready to finish what she started." Around a crackling fire, the figure introduced himself as Jonas, a former insider in the organization. "Your mother was the best operative we had," Jonas said. "Until she realized the truth about who we were working for." Lily leaned in, her heart racing. "What truth?" Jonas looked at her, his eyes dark with regret. "The organization isn't just about control. They're building a system to erase free will. Your mother tried to stop them, and she paid the price." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "She didn't just disappear, did she? They killed her." Jonas nodded solemnly. "But her work lives on, in you." With Jonas's insider knowledge, the team's strategy became clearer. "They're focusing all their resources on the central hub," Jonas explained, pointing to a city on the map. "It's where they're finalizing the algorithm. If we destroy it, we cripple their entire operation." Tessa crossed her arms. "That sounds easier said than done." Jonas smirked. "That's why I brought these." He pulled out a bag filled with advanced tech, jammers, decoys, and explosive devices. Ryan grinned. "Now we're talking." Lily, still processing her mother's fate, stood up. "Then let's finish this. For her. For everyone." The central hub was a towering fortress of steel and glass, its cold exterior hiding the sinister work within. The team arrived at night, using Jonas's gadgets to bypass the perimeter defenses. Inside, the air was heavy with the hum of machinery. Lily's pulse quickened as they navigated the labyrinthine halls, their goal clear. "The main control room," Eli whispered. "How much time do we have before they notice us?" Jonas glanced at his watch. "Not enough. The control room was massive, its walls lined with screens displaying streams of data. In the center stood a massive console, the brain of the operation. Lily approached it, inserting the final virus-loaded USB drive. The screen lit up with a progress bar. "Here we go again," Eli muttered, keeping watch by the door, but before the upload could complete, alarms blared. Guards flooded the room, weapons drawn. "Stay back!" Ryan shouted, tossing a smoke bomb. Chaos erupted, the room filling with shouts and the crackle of gunfire. As the smoke cleared, a guard lunged at Lily. Jonas stepped in, taking the hit and collapsing to the floor. "No!" Lily screamed, dropping to his side. Jonas gripped her hand, his face pale. "Finish it," he rasped. "Don't let my sacrifice be for nothing." Tears blurred Lily's vision, but she nodded, rising to her feet. The upload was nearly complete. Eli and Ryan held off the guards as Tessa worked to barricade the door. "We're almost out of time," Tessa shouted. The progress bar hit 100%, and the system began to crash. The screens flickered, their once organized streams of data turning into chaos. Red warning messages flashed as the system's foundation unraveled. "We did it!" Lily shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of relief and adrenaline, but their victory wasn't without cost. Guards were regrouping outside the barricade, pounding on the door. Jonas's sacrifice weighed heavily on Lily as she grabbed the remaining devices. "We have to go now," Tessa urged, her voice tight with urgency. Eli pulled Lily toward the emergency exit while Ryan threw the last of their smoke bombs to cover their escape. The team burst out of the hub, only to find themselves pursued by drones and armed guards. The night air was thick with tension, the whirring of drones echoing like wasps. "Head to the alley," Ryan shouted, leading them through a maze of narrow streets. Lily's legs burned, but she kept running, clutching the USB drive like a lifeline. Behind them, explosions and shouts rang out as the hub began to collapse from within. Tessa pointed to a waiting car. "There. That's our ride." They piled in, tires screeching as the vehicle sped away into the dark. Hours later, they found themselves in a safe house provided by one of Jonas's old contacts. The room was small but secure, its walls lined with maps and tools of resistance. Lily sat on the floor, staring at the USB drive. "We stopped their central hub, but Jonas said it wasn't their only plan. What if it's not enough?" Eli knelt beside her. "It's a blow they won't recover from easily. We've bought time for others to join the fight." Tessa placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Jonas believed in you. Don't let his sacrifice be in vain." News reports began to trickle in. Cities across the world experienced system outages, disrupting the organization's communication control. "We hit them where it hurts," Ryan said, watching the screen with satisfaction, but Lily's gaze was distant. "It's not over. They'll try to rebuild, stronger than before." Eli squeezed her hand. "Then we'll keep fighting." For the first time in days, Lily managed a small smile. Together. The organization wasn't taking their defeat lightly. Within days, new threats emerged. Anonymous messages warned of retaliation, and the group's safe house was nearly discovered twice. "They're desperate," Tessa said. "That makes them dangerous." Jonas's old contact, a tech genius named Caleb, offered to help. "They've gone underground, but I can track them. It'll take time." Time wasn't on their side. The group began moving from place to place, staying ahead of their enemies while rallying support from other resistance fighters. While on the run, they received a message from a journalist named Sophie, who claimed to have evidence of the organization's deeper plans. "I've been following them for years," Sophie explained during a secret meeting. "You've shaken their foundation, but their roots run deep." She handed Lily a folder filled with documents. "This is what they're hiding. If we expose this, the world will turn against them." Lily flipped through the pages, her stomach churning. The documents detailed experiments, blackmail, and plans to infiltrate global governments. "This is it," she said. "The proof we need." With Sophie's help, the group devised a plan to broadcast the information worldwide. They hacked into a global news network, preparing to unveil the organization's secrets. As Lily stood before the camera, her hands shook. "This is for my mom," she whispered. When the countdown reached 0, she began speaking, her voice steady and resolute. "The truth you're about to hear has been hidden for too long." She laid out the evidence, her words punctuated by clips and documents Sophie had uncovered. The broadcast ended with Lily's plea, "Join us. Fight back. Together, we can end their tyranny." The broadcast sent shockwaves across the globe. Social media platforms erupted with hashtags calling for accountability, and governments scrambled to respond. "We've turned the tide," Tessa said, watching the news reports. Protests and rallies were springing up worldwide, but Lily wasn't celebrating yet. "They'll try to discredit us. They won't go down without a fight." Sophie nodded. "She's right. We've exposed them, but exposure isn't the same as destruction. They'll retaliate." Eli adjusted the straps on his backpack. "Then we need to stay one step ahead. We have the world's attention, now we use it." The organization moved swiftly, flooding media outlets with fake stories about Lily and her team. They branded them as criminals, claiming the broadcast was a hoax. "I expected this," Sophie said grimly, pulling up the fabricated reports on her laptop. "They're good at spinning the narrative." Lily clenched her fists. "Then we show them what's real. We hit them again, this time harder." Ryan smirked. "You mean we go for the big finish?" Tessa raised an eyebrow. "Do we even know what their next move is?" Sophie leaned forward. "I think I might have an idea." Sophie revealed intel on the organization's last major facility, a secluded compound buried deep in the mountains. "This is where their leadership operates," Sophie explained. "If we take this out, they'll be powerless." Caleb added, "It's heavily fortified, but we can create a distraction to draw them out." Lily studied the map, determination hardening her features. "We finish what we started. For Jonas. For my mom. For everyone they've hurt." The team prepared for what they knew would be their most dangerous mission yet. The journey to the compound was treacherous. Narrow roads twisted through the foggy mountains, the air thin and cold. Lily felt a mix of fear and resolve as they approached the facility. "This is it," she whispered. The team split into two groups. Caleb and Ryan would create a diversion at the front gate, while Lily, Tessa, Eli, and Sophie infiltrated through a hidden passage Jonas had marked on the map. "Stay safe," Ryan said, clapping Eli on the back. "You too," Eli replied. "We'll see you on the other side." Inside the hidden passage, the air was damp and the walls narrow. Each step echoed softly, the silence amplifying their tension. "This feels too easy," Tessa muttered. As if on cue, the sound of footsteps echoed ahead. Sophie raised a hand, signaling the group to stop. Guards appeared, flashlights scanning the passage. Lily held her breath as the beam passed inches from her face. Eli threw a small sound emitter down a side tunnel, luring the guards away. As soon as they were gone, the group pressed on. They emerged into the facility's main control room, a stark contrast to the narrow passage. The room buzzed with activity, screens displaying live feeds of their protests and plans for countermeasures. "This is it," Sophie said, setting up her equipment. "I can hijack their system from here." Tessa and Eli stood guard while Lily placed explosives around the room. "We take their power, and we make sure they can't rebuild," she said, but before they could finish, alarms blared. The team froze as a voice echoed through the room. Well, the voice said. "Lily Carter. Just like your mother." The leader of the organization stepped into the room, flanked by guards. His cold eyes locked onto Lily. "You think you've won?" He sneered. "You've only scratched the surface of what we're capable of." Lily stood her ground, her voice steady. "Your reign of fear ends here." The leader chuckled. "Brave words for someone so young. But bravery won't save you." Eli stepped forward. "Neither will hiding behind an army." The leader's smile faded. "You have no idea what you're up against." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut through. The leader's gaze never left Lily as the guards closed in, their weapons raised. "We end this now," the leader said coldly, his voice echoing in the control room. Lily's heart pounded, but she stood tall, refusing to back down. "We've already ended it. You just don't know it yet." With a signal from Sophie, the screens blinked out, and the room plunged into darkness. Panic ensued. The sound of footsteps echoed as the guards scrambled to react. "Now!" Eli yelled. In the chaos, Lily and the team moved swiftly. Tessa disabled one of the guards, and Ryan, still outside, set off another round of explosions to create further distraction. Lily took a deep breath and activated the detonator she'd been holding. A loud explosion rocked the facility, the walls shaking violently. The lights flickered back on, only to reveal the damage. The leader staggered backward, shock on his face as he realized the extent of the destruction. "You fool!" he yelled. "You've destroyed everything." Lily, breathing heavily, faced him with unwavering determination. "Everything you've built on lies. It's gone." The control room was in disarray. Sparks flew from damaged circuits, and alarms blared louder than ever. But Lily knew they had to finish what they started. "Take him!" she shouted. With swift precision, the team rushed forward. Eli and Ryan tackled the remaining guards, while Lily and Tessa focused on the leader. "You won't win," the leader spat, reaching for his weapon. Before he could strike, Sophie disabled the system's power grid, plunging the room into darkness again. The leader's weapon misfired in the confusion, and in that split second, Lily lunged. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it with all the strength she had. "It's over," she said quietly. The leader's defiance crumbled. "You don't understand. They'll just rebuild. You can't stop them." Lily looked him in the eye. "We've already stopped them. The truth is out. People know what you are." The room continued to shake as more explosions rocked the facility. The building was crumbling under the weight of the destruction. "Time to go!" Ryan shouted, pulling the leader away from Lily. The group rushed through the exit, narrowly avoiding falling debris. As they climbed into the getaway vehicles, the compound behind them erupted into a massive fireball. "It's done," Tessa said, her voice tinged with relief. "They're finished." But Lily knew it wasn't quite that simple. The world had seen the truth, but the fight was far from over. Weeks passed since the explosion. The world had shifted. The organization's leadership was in disarray, and governments were scrambling to regain control. But Lily, standing in front of a crowd of protesters holding signs that read "End the Lies," felt a surge of hope. The revolution had sparked something greater than they had imagined. "We've won a battle," Sophie said, walking beside her. "But this is just the beginning." Lily nodded. "Together, we'll keep fighting for what's right. For the future." The future was uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, Lily believed it could be better. Lily stood alone by a small, simple memorial. A single candle flickered in the quiet night, casting long shadows on the ground. "Jonas," she whispered. "We did it. You were right to believe in me." She closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. The fight wasn't over, but they had taken the first steps toward a new world, one where truth and justice prevailed. As the wind whispered through the trees, Lily made a vow to never stop fighting for what was right. The broadcast that had started it all had left an indelible mark on the world. People who had lived in fear for years now spoke out, demanding accountability and change. The organization's corruption and lies were exposed, and public outcry reached new heights. Governments began to pass laws protecting freedom of speech and privacy, and citizens rose up against the system that had oppressed them. Lily watched from the sidelines, proud of the movement she had helped ignite. "This is the world we fought for," she said to her team. "A world where people speak the truth, no matter the cost." But in her heart, she knew the journey wasn't over. The fight for freedom was ongoing. One day, Lily stood before a crowd of young activists, all eager to continue the work they had started. She spoke to them, her voice strong and full of conviction. "The fight we've won is just the beginning," she said. "You are the future. You are the ones who will keep pushing for change, no matter what." As she looked out over the faces of those who were now carrying the torch, Lily realized that the world was no longer as it had been. The power was no longer in the hands of the few. It was in the hands of the people, and that, more than anything, gave her hope for the future. Lily sat on a bench overlooking the city, the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The streets below were bustling with people, but this time, there was something different about the atmosphere, a quiet strength, a sense of hope. She thought back to everything they'd been through, the struggle, the danger, the losses. She remembered Jonas, her mother, and the countless faces of those who had fought beside her. It hadn't been easy, and at times, it had felt impossible, but in the end, they had done it. They had changed the world. Not with violence or power, but with truth. And that truth had ignited a revolution that no one could stop. As she looked up at the sky, a thought lingered in her mind. The fight for justice and freedom never ends. It's a journey, not a destination. And though the path ahead might be uncertain, it was one she would continue walking with unwavering resolve. She could hear the voices of her team in her mind, the laughter, the debates, the moments of silence after every victory and defeat. They were no longer just a team of rebels. They had become something greater, symbols of change, of resilience. Lily closed her eyes, feeling the cool breeze on her face. The world was different now, but one thing was clear. The truth had set them free, and it was something no one could ever take away. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily whispered to herself, "We did it. We made a difference. And we will keep making it."